Colby Loucks joins us now. He's the Vice President and Deputy Lead of Wildlife Conservation at the World Wildlife Fund here in the United States. And Colby, I was just out in San Francisco for the APEC gathering, and I think that was one of the headlines in the thaw in the relations between the U.S. and China, that pandas might be coming back to the States. We've heard a lot about panda diplomacy, but can you also talk about the residual benefits of this, that this fascination with pandas perhaps has increased interest or knowledge in conservation?
Yeah, it's such a great and exciting thing to hear President Xi signal that there's pandas coming back. And I think when you go to the zoo, I also live in Washington, D.C., you go to the zoo, you can see just what an international symbol of conservation pandas are. The joy and happiness on kids and adults' faces at the zoo. And, you know, since 1961, when they became the logo for WWF, they have become the ambassador for conservation around the world.
Let's talk about conservation. Just a few years back, in 2016, I remember pandas were moved from endangered species to vulnerable. At the time, it seemed like we were rebounding in terms of numbers of pandas in the wild, but we still haven't really turned the corner, have we? I mean, can you give us an idea of where we are in terms of increasing the numbers?
Right, yeah. In 2015, in the last giant panda survey, they found approximately 1,900 wild pandas, which was a 17% increase compared to the previous survey in 2003. And so that's just a really positive trajectory. And I think that's why you saw the improvement of the status of the giant pandas. That said, about a third of the pandas do not live in protected areas, and about half of their habitat in China is not protected. So there's still room to grow, but the Chinese government has made great strides over the last 2 decades. Over 50 nature reserves are dedicated to panda conservation. So I think we're on the right trajectory, and we should be see pandas as a symbol of hope.
And talk to us about these efforts in Chengdu. I imagine you embrace these moves.
Yeah, I think anytime you can try to encourage the genetic diversity and building up the population, both in the wild but also in captivity, to perhaps return them to the wild as a positive direction. I think there's plenty of room in the wild for pandas to be reintroduced, and I think that's the general direction that we're going with the Chengdu Giant Panda Research Center.
And you're talking about in the wild. Is that one of the biggest concerns about conservation, not just in China, but around the world, the encroachment of people? It seems like that's been a huge problem over the years. The wild just seems to shrink.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The wild shrinks, and that is what's happening to pandas, but it's also happening to biodiversity around the world. It's the loss of habitat. It's the fragmentation of the habitat into smaller and smaller pieces. Those are the two biggest threats to biodiversity and pandas, as well as a changing climate is now starting to come in there as well as a threat. So pandas are such a good emblematic symbol for conservation, because what is occurring to them in their habitat is happening around the world.
Colby, thanks so much for your insights. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.